the sanction imposed by the tribunal last night was manifestly inadequate.
You could be Mother Teresa, but if you knock somebody out on the ground, you get 4 weeks. Simple as that.
It was unacceptable, that outcome last night.
The system is in strife.
I think the football world will be gobsmacked by that.
I mean, the Tigers will be doing backflips.
That's every bit of 5 or 6 for me. Right. Every bit of 5 or 6. It's as bad as it gets.
For the game's credibility, the AFL has to try and work out the mess that took place last night.
The burning issue of the week comes to its conclusion on the 360 agenda. Basher Hooley again on trial as the AFL strives for a more appropriate penalty before the appeals board. Gary Ablett declares himself ready and is selected for his delayed 300-game milestone. And Joel Selwood returns to training as he looks to take the field 6 days after being concussed. I'm Gerard Watney, he's Mark Robinson. This Thursday night it's footy from all angles. Hello, Robbo.
Hello, Gerard.
We have Brian Lake and Nick Del Santo reunited. We've got a couple of stars from the under-18s which will captivate us throughout the afternoon tomorrow. So it's a rare Thursday for us.
Yes, it is. Can you hurry up tonight? I've got to get to Kevin Chetty's celebration. So if you talk quicker, we'll be able to get off earlier, OK?
Right.
So
you're on.
No dilly-dallying around. What am I looking forward to?
What are you looking forward to?
Oh, I'm looking... There were so many... I've gone back to a game. Yep. There were so many games. But I'm looking forward to Melbourne and Sydney tomorrow night. I want to find out once again if this football club called Melbourne, who is just surging at the moment, can take another scalp with a lot of injuries. And if they can, and I'm sure we'll talk to Dell and Brian about it, if they can, what a performance it would be. They're just playing really good football. They're playing with, they're playing with a lot of soul at the moment. They're all in it together. Goodwin, and they all know the players are missing. You just got to step up, and they're playing good football, and they're believing in each other. And when you got those two combinations, when you got that as a combination, Gerard, nothing is insurmountable. And the Swans are okay. They were okay last week. They got the 4 points. Now they're coming down to the G. Yep. I reckon this is going to be a beauty.
It is. I totally agree.
Are you calling the game before you go to? When are you going to the boxing?
Saturday night. So I'll do the Saturday afternoon game and then jump on a flight after that.
Righto, just be careful with your throat, OK? What are you looking forward to?
The more I thought about what you wrote yesterday, the more I think Nick's 8th mark on the weekend. It will be big. It's a milestone that shouldn't be easily glossed over, the man who's taken the most marks in the history of the game. And when you put the list together as to who's on it, so who he's going past, and then you think about his consistency over the years and how we have marvelled at him and how he's an automatic Hall of Famer when the time comes, and that you can vividly picture a dozen of those marks as a starting point, and the one that obviously accompanied your story is the signature mark with the flight. But I think to go past Gary Dempsey when he takes his 8th mark at Subiaco, and he usually takes 8 in the game.
He averages 8.8.
Let's assume that it will happen. With Lowe and Richardson and Johnson there, it's a huge achievement, which is not to be missed, I think.
Matthew Richardson was the only player on that list not to play 300 games by memory, and 282, and he averages 8 a game, Richo. I think we forget. Everyone says, he couldn't kick goals, but geez, Richo could do a lot of great things on this football field. He's in really good company.
To be top of that list by the end of the weekend, that's really something.
Yeah, it is.
All right, well, top of the agenda is back at headquarters tonight, where the AFL is striving to have the Basher Hooley suspension of 2 weeks handed down by the tribunal increased at the appeals board. The hearing has gone for 2 hours. They are adjourned right now to contemplate the result of all of this. Let's head to Julian de Stoop. Jules, on duty again. Give us a feel for how this has unfolded.
Yeah, it's certainly been a long one, as you mentioned, Gerard. So we began with an updated medical report on Jed Lamb, which showed, of course, that he's out with concussion this week. He hasn't been able to train. And the AFL basically put together 3 main arguments. The first one, that it was manifestly inadequate. And they use the example here that if a player was charged with intentionally striking a player with medium impact they would get a 3-week suspension. So how can a player that's been charged with intentionally striking a player with high impact walk away with 2 weeks? They also made the point that an intentional strike, which has the potential for serious injury or bringing the game in disrepute, certainly has to be judged more harshly than it was on Tuesday night when Basher Hooley was handed a 2-week suspension. And thirdly, they made the point that good character is irrelevant, and it is not. Shouldn't have come into play like it did on Tuesday night. It's not an exceptional and compelling circumstance. That is what a good record is, and that's also for things like provocation or self-defence in an on-field incident. So the Tigers hit back, saying that that's not the case. If you look at the tribunal guidelines, that a good record and also good character can potentially be fit into this category. And they also hit back on the fact, like they did on Tuesday night, saying that this was not an intentional act. They went through all the arguments again from Tuesday night and then probably made the farcical claim that this was almost a freak accident, and this happened 50 times that Jed Lamb wouldn't get injured like he did, which was a little bit farcical. So as we say, they've just gone away to consider their verdict, and we should have it very shortly.
So given this is a highly technical and legal appeal as opposed to any form of retrial, Jules, is the line that did strike me from Richmond's advocate was that the tribunal was told it was entitled to consider character, and the AFL Council didn't object at the time, and the objection came when they worked out how the tribunal had used character. I'll be fascinated to see how a group of lawyers interprets that argument.
That's right, Jared. That was exactly the argument the Richmond lawyer made, and he also made a few other points that some of the things that the AFL brought up tonight, such as incidents that can potentially cause serious injury, they weren't brought up on Tuesday night, and you can't, in hindsight, on a Wednesday, look at these things and then bring them up on a Thursday at an appeal. This is not a rehearing as such, it's just a review. So that was a big point made by the Richmond defence team tonight.
All right, well, you'll be back in there shortly to get the verdict, so we'll come back to you, I imagine, in the next 15 minutes or so. Good on you, Jules.
Thank you, Jared.
So there's probably not a whole lot of value in discussing this until we get the finish. So why don't we move through and we'll come back, and I'm sure by the end of the break we'll be discussing this at length.
No, you don't have to ask me, Jared. It's your show.
And you wanted to keep it moving. Yes. So I'm just keeping you moving.
Let's go. I've got to get the sheets.
OK, so the key outs and ins of the weekend. So the outs are littered, and you alluded at the start, there's more outs at Melbourne. They've got nothing back, and they lose Garlett and Salem, both to hamstrings. Sydney loses Hayward to a foot injury. Liberatore only played the one. He's got a cork. That was as much information as the Bulldogs were alluding to. At West Coast, they lost a bit here. Priddis, Hearn and Schofield, which had its own amusements. He beat the suspension, but injury has done him in anyway. We knew Lynch was going to miss for the Crows, but Cameron does as well with a wrist. Curnow misses for the Blues, and that is significant in the Rory Sloane matchup. Lamb with the concussion, he's still quite unwell. Petrevski-Seaton's been managed. Cunnington is suspended for North Melbourne. Taranto with a long-termer for the Giants. Scott Selwood is out with a hamstring. So Joel Selwood has been named, but Scott Selwood is lost in 4 injuries for the Cats. Hawley's suspended and Dane Beams misses for a stretch with the shoulder. So on the Geelong side of things with Joel Selwood, this is what Chris Scott had to say about the captain.
It's not really an update on what I gave post-game, and it was always a likely situation that he would either be ruled out at some point midweek, or it would take until late in the process. And while the indications are really good, it's not a situation where you can say he's definitely going to play until the last minute. So I'm still optimistic he'll be picked in our squad. But until I hear from the doctors, say 24 hours from game time, I won't know myself.
So holding true to what he told us on Monday night, as the expectation was that he would be set, but he's not there. Hawley's been banned for 4 weeks, so we'll go back to Jules shortly. The Joel Selwood discussion.
I'm a bit taken aback. Hope he plays. I don't expect him to play. I don't know how long you want me to talk about this, Jared. Chris Scott said he was in the hands of the doctors. He will have another concussion test, I would imagine, and then they'll be making a decision. If I had a guess, no, I can't guess. I'm not a doctor. It was a big knockout, that's all I'll say.
Yeah, their emergencies are Buzzer, House and Simpson. So you're on the really inexperienced side of things there. They lost Scott Selwood, Stewart, Hall and Smith and Lang with injuries and Joel Selwood pending. On the ins side of things, these landed well for Sydney. Jared McVeigh, I saw him play a little bit of the NEFL last week, and that was enough to make sure he gets his place, and Jones is back from suspension. So the Swans are strengthened while the Demons are the opposite. Bob Murphy returns, having done the hamstring on his way to the bye. Wellingham is in for the Eagles. McGovern's back for the Crows, and Ablett, the untimely injury last week, he plays. So Henderson and Zach Smith are two of the ins for the Cats. How about this for the Giants? Devon Smith, Rory Lobb, Josh Kelly.
Not bad.
You like to add that most weeks?
Not bad.
That'd be all right. Pollock comes back for Port Adelaide. Hooker's in for Essendon. Jamie Elliott comes back for Collingwood. They desperately need him up front. And those two big ones at the bottom. Yeah, Fremantle have been lost without them, Fife and Sandilands. So the Collingwood side of things, Jamie Elliott is that Sellers spoke about last night, the lack of connectivity between mid-forward, and when he has played, he has looked terrific in that Collingwood.
He's like a 6 foot key forward, full forward. Everyone, because he's so good overhead that I would imagine that you always try and get him one-on-one. He's quick on the lead. He can jump, and he's strong overhead. So he's like a secondary key forward with more. They need him. They need him. We all know the numbers from last week, 80-odd more possessions, 11 I think it was, less inside 50s. Certainty going into the forward line, Jamie Elliott certainly helps. The timing of all of this is, you think back to that game against Hawthorn, and it's only a handful of weeks ago, and it was torches at the gates of the MCG at quarter time, flaming torches, and then Nathan Buckley and Collingwood were able to sort of push that back with the recovery. Their predicament is 5 and 8. It's a mathematical predicament by Buckley's own terms. They simply have to beat Hawthorn to avoid going 5 and 9. Unfortunately for Collingwood and Buckley, they've got to do this to a lot of teams. 5 and 9. Anything can happen this season, but it's highly unlikely at 5 and 9. And unfortunately, from 5 and 9, the season can go really pear-shaped, or can go into a recovery mode. If it goes pear-shaped after 5 and 9, there's some big decisions to be made at Collingwood. And I guess the same at the Gold Coast in the latter part of this season, but they do get to celebrate his Gary Ablett. That was most untimely last week. Yeah. A calf injury that would take that out. Yes. And now he gets to play the milestone game. Yeah, it is. Last week was so disappointing. And you'll be here when we get to our, what's our weekend forecast? That's what it's called, our weekend forecast. This is a huge game for Gold Coast. Yep. If Rodney Eade and some people at the staff at the Gold Coast Suns seriously want to keep their job, which they do, they can't afford to drop this one. Yep. North Melbourne are, 16th on the ladder or 15th? They cannot afford to drop it at home. All right. Let's head back to the appeals board. Basher Hooley given a 4-week suspension. So, Jules, how did the verdict come down?
Yeah, Jared, the AFL got what they were looking for on Friday night, that 4-week ban. So a pretty brief summary by the AFL Appeals Board just a couple of minutes ago, basically saying that, yes, it was an intentional strike and that his exceptional character wasn't relevant in the circumstances. And they made the point that a strike of such force, which caused an injury to Jed Lamb in terms of a severe concussion, has exactly the same impact if it's made from a person of good character or a person of not good character. So earlier in the hearing, the AFL was pushing for a 4-week minimum like they did on Tuesday night, and that is the verdict that has been handed down. So hopefully we'll hear from either Basher Hooley or Neil Baum very shortly, and Simon Lethlean, the AFL operations manager who launched this appeal yesterday, will speak in about 15 minutes' time.
So can you just clarify, Jules, that character on the field or off the field was so a clean record across a lot of years on the field of footy wasn't deemed to be relevant either?
No, the only thing that was mentioned was the character off field, that wasn't relevant in determining the penalty, and it shouldn't be ever relevant in determining an on-field penalty.
I need to just clarify something that Jared just said then. So at no stage, Jules, did the chairman announce that, OK, he's got 5 weeks, but we're going to reduce it to 4 weeks because we are taking in consideration he's never been reported in all of his life on the field and he's got an exemplary record. That was not said at all.
No, it wasn't. No, they just basically stated that it was a 4-week penalty. They didn't go into any reasons to how they came to that 4-week penalty. They just simply stated it was a 4-week suspension.
OK, Jules, you turn around and get Bashir Hooley when he walks out the door if that's the way that it goes.
Now, I want to know, you've got more your experience in this than me. I always thought on-field character, as you asked Jules, would be has been taken into consideration for as long as I can remember. But now suddenly it's been thrown out.
Well, so not necessarily is because 4 wasn't the upper end of it. And Kingy sat here last night and he thought it was in the 5 to 6 week range. So if you put the 2 weeks aside as a rogue decision, and that's what this is saying, it's saying it was manifestly inadequate. So you sit that to the side. The tribunal is not obliged to do it in the way that we are describing, which is what happens in the tables and has happened through the match review and has happened previously in the open hearings, where you would get a week knocked off for 10 years of a clean record. But in the way that this is formed, they're not obliged to sort of sit there and walk us through that. I think when we sat together on Monday night, my feeling was 4 and probably 1 off for the record that he's carried on field before it sort of all became clouded in what happened. So
you call the first decision rogue. I call it quite confusing now. Now, people sitting at home right now could absolutely easily ask, what in the hell is going on at the AFL tribunal? We've got one group of people giving 2 weeks and then they appeal and it's really out of the mix and they say, no, you can have 4. I mean, people say, that's great, you got independence. I say, well, where's the consistency?
Yeah. I do think you're entitled to clean up a mistake. And
that's if you think it was a mistake. And most people thought it was a mistake, I'll give you that.
The way that the evidence was interpreted by the tribunal, or the way that was weighted by the tribunal, that was the only area of controversy. It was a completely standard way to argue the case. So I don't think there's any apportioning of blame towards Hooley or to Richmond in the way they did it. It simply sat with the tribunal in the way they were prepared to weight things. I think they confused themselves.
OK, do you think...
I thought that on the night when we were told 2 weeks, that they had confused themselves.
Yeah, you were quite stunned. Do you think that the AFL by appealing, this is the league, by appealing, lent on the appeals tribunal?
No, not with the people involved. O'Callaghan, such a great legal mind over so many years. Collis, who's been the chairman of the tribunal in its previous incarnations, and Michael Green, who knows both footy and the law so well. Not at all. I think they've gone back to judging the action, and I do think this got totally wound up where it shouldn't have, and it's straight into all the wrong areas. It's not about the character, it's about the actions. And then the penalty usually includes, now what's his status within the game been over a long period of time? This just got too confused. I do feel like it's been straightened out. I think 4 weeks is a reasonable penalty for the action, and maybe Basher ends up being a bit stiff, but he doesn't get the knockdown of 1 week.
I find I agree. You know, your position on this is far greater than mine, but I find it interesting that these 3 people may be outstanding people, but they're only human. When the AFL appeals a decision for the first time in 100 years, I can't believe that they didn't get some sort of motion or feeling of where the AFL stood on this.
Well, I think that would bring the system and the league to its knees, as if that was the case. You do need the separation of powers. That's how it holds up. These men are of such... So this is Hooley as he walks out of the appeals board tonight.
Decision's been made, and I accept it. Point number 2, my concern is and always has been for Jed, and I hope he recovers really quick. The other thing is that we move on with life, and I'll do my best to help the team prepare for the next few games. Thanks.
So that's live as Basher Hooley leaves the appeals board tonight. The other bit I would say to that, Robbo, is in the first instance is all of the ex-footballers that we've been around this week, and this is a guild of former footballers who made the original decision. I haven't come across one ex-player who thinks that was the right decision. So I just think it was so far out of what the parameters of this case were, and I truly think they just confused themselves in the hearing as it happened, and then it gets straightened up in in a more acceptable way that serves the game.
Yeah, no, it serves the game, you're right. It just got hijacked a little bit. I don't know if that's the right word, but it got hijacked and politics and race have come into it. I hope
it can't get hijacked any further.
No, it can't. I just hope that football people who go to games say, righto, you got your whack, Basher, let's move on.
Yeah. The action has been judged for what it is on the football field. Hooley's character is actually not up for debate.
No, it's not.
It was the tribunal's interpretation of that and how they related to it, and that has now been straightened out. And in a sensible, reasonable football environment, and surely we can be that. That is where it ends, and it doesn't. It is
just got
not
more faith in
sustained.
people than me, Jared.
I think we need to be that as a community.
Absolutely, we need to be it. We need to be it, but I haven't got as much faith in the community as you.
Straightened out the shot clock. See, I don't mind this.
I've got easy money this week.
This week.
Right, what are we talking about? The shot clock.
Yeah,
right.
out of footy operations at the AFL, Simon Lethlean has been faced with a rogue verdict, which for the first time he's been prepared to correct on behalf of the AFL.
Yep.
And he's been faced with a nonsensical convention. Let's call it a convention. What happened 2 years ago, where we decided to hide the shot clock in the last 2 minutes.
It's not a convention,
of the quarter,
Jared.
and this was always going to happen, and when it did, Simon Lethlean has moved to correct it. I absolutely applaud this. All you can do is fix up the messes as they arise in front of you. And from here on, the shot clock will be shown, because the covenant that what happens in the first minute of the game must happen in the last minute of the game, which has been breached for 2 years on this, is now sorted out.
Sort of, but except the umpires that we've all been reminded can call play on before your 30 seconds is up. Umpire...
If you're making a git of yourself...
No, you can't have a rule. You like that word, git. You can't have a rule 30 seconds for some and less than 30 seconds for someone else, Jared.
I think if you're taking the mickey, the umpire can hurry you up.
Well, what's the mickey? Does the umpire decide what the mickey is? So looking at the scoreboard is mickey, is it?
No, I think if you're standing there for 10 or 12 seconds, watching the seconds tick down... And
well, hang on. They've put the rule in, you've got 30 seconds.
Yeah. Actually, you're making my argument back to me now. I like that argument. Yeah. But I think this is a compromise. What we had was foolish.
It'll be gone.
It was nonsensical.
Do you think it's gone from the game next year?
The shot clock, which is not a shot clock at all.
Oh, I don't know what it is. It's just a thing that counts down from 30 to 0.
It has been a contrivance, but at least it's consistently applied now. I think that's all you can ask for
have fixed it up. That's all they have. Come on, I've got to get the shoes.
All right, let's get our players, or our ex-players.
Our ex-players.
Nick Del Santo and Brian Lake to chew over what's about to happen in round 15. The images of round 14. That's the right song for it too.
Brian, Jared, Brian.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys. I'm new to the show.
Robert.
How was your holiday?
No holiday for me. No, just no Thursday night football.
No, we had it on. We just didn't get you on.
Pie night. We're worried about you taking all the pies, Brian.
Oh, it must have been.
Welcome back.
Look at that little clip with me and you before our show. I was looking a little bit chubby there. I probably still am a little bit chubby too, but no, it's been a good break. Good to be back.
Welcome back.
All right, the serious note of the evening is Basher Hooley now has a 4-week suspension. Does that sit more adequately?
About right. I think what the incident is worth is 4 weeks. I think the process that the AFL has gone through to overrule, to step in, I thought if it went from 2 to 3, Robbo, that for the sake of 1 week probably wasn't enough. What was the point of that? I thought 4 was the base number, and then the tribunal, or this new committee, could make the decision post that. But I thought 4 was the base.
And do you think they had that feeling as well, Richmond and Basher, when they didn't talk to the media after they got 2 weeks. Usually you go in there and say, yeah, we thought that's a good result, we got the 2 weeks. But they did no media about it. So they probably had that little inkling that this is just not quite right.
They probably didn't want to smirk when they walked out after 2 weeks thinking that they got away with
Did you speak when you left the tribunal after your little incident with Drew Petrie?
Yeah, for me, I got the 4 weeks and I didn't use any character references because no one really likes me, I don't think, anyway, so I didn't have to use them. The bloke down the shop's not going to help me. But for me, with mine as well, it's not like my player got injured, Drew got up and kicked the goal within 20 seconds, but for me it was the look of the game. That was the biggest thing, that you didn't want to have that look in the game, and exactly with Basher here, you don't want to be seeing anyone 40 or 50 metres away from the ball getting hit like that and getting concussed.
Was that your idea to speak to the media? And if so, why?
It's more just to put it to bed. It's just to go, yep, I've come in here, I understand that I've got the 4 weeks. Yes, I've got done for misconduct. And just get it out of the way. So you're not getting door stopped, you're not getting the media the next day. You just try to nip it in the butt straight away and then move on and start training.
OK, well, Simon Lethlean has just spoken on behalf of the AFL.
That's quick.
We'll be back with him shortly.
That's OK. What do you think he's going to say, Nick?
I think he has to say they did the right thing. I think the way, once again, that they came out earlier this week, they've put a match review panel in power to make a decision. They've passed it on to Tuesday night tribunal, and then the AFL says we're not content with what the decisions have been made. I think they've got it right, and ultimately that's what you want as a football fan. You want fairness and consistency. I think we've got that to this point. It's just a shame it probably took 3 days too late.
All right, let's have a second go at this.
Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to read a statement on behalf of the AFL. The Appeals Board tonight has reinforced the AFL's position on the importance of protecting the head and the health and safety of our players, and I'm satisfied with that result. I do want to say a few words about Basher Hooley. He's a leader in our game, a player and a person of great integrity. His remorse for his actions were clear after the completion of the match. Our actions in appealing the tribunal decision were about protecting players from injury to their head, and this is very important to us. I want to reassure Basher that he will continue to be held in the high standard and high regard in our game and in our community. Thank you very much.
So it's not personal, and it never was, and the capacity to judge an incident without judging a person is fundamental to the way that a football tribunal must act, and that's what we have as the result of this. All right, to the games at hand, and we start tomorrow night, which, as Robbo set up at the start, is just such a cracking game. Melbourne and the Sydney Swans.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, isn't it? Melbourne searching for that 5th game in a row. They're putting some really good games, winning some close games and winning games on the road. And for Sydney, it's just such a tough ask. When you're 0-6, every game is so important for this side. No matter what, they got out of jail last week against Eston. They ticked that off, bring a couple of players back. But it's just so hard to keep going to that well of just, this is do or die. This week is like a final. And coming up to the MCG, I don't think they play the MCG very well. You look at Lance Franklin's only played a couple of really good games there recently in the last sort of 5 or 6 games that he's played at the MCG. The ground is a lot bigger, which I think really suits the way the Demons play, how they like to play high contested style of game. I think that's depending on the weather.
Yeah, I thought that suited Sydney more than, say, Richmond, when it took them 2.5 quarters to rope them in.
You look how the Hawks played them at their own ground, made the ground big, made them spread, made them defend. If Melbourne are able to do that, and I think they're reasonably skilled and probably cover the ground a lot more than Hawthorn do at the moment. If Melbourne are allowed to do that, I think they win comfortably.
How many out is too many out? What's the tipping point before the team on the rise is just not that team that takes the field?
Well, for a team on the rise, and if you're going to compare them to the GWS, who have got probably equally as many key players out, we're about to find out. It is a huge test, and when you're playing any game of football, you want your best players on the field, but you want them even more so when you're working your way through a ladder position. The amount of hype. I mean, tomorrow night's a huge game, Friday night football for them.
The lid off if they win?
Well, the only reason I'd say no to the lid off, I reckon even if they do win tomorrow night against Sydney, they've had 2 better wins this year, in my opinion. Adelaide in Adelaide and West Coast in Perth. I think are 2 greater challenges, and obviously taking into account the travel, but the teams and the form of those teams in those particular grounds, I think at worst they're 50-50 to beat Sydney anyway at the MCG. You'd hope that they can keep a lid on it because, as we know and as history shows, when you get ahead of yourself, this game has an amazing ability to bite you in the, you know where, Robbo? Yeah, bite you in the nose.
And for me, the spine still concerns me a little bit. You got Oscar McDonald down back. I know you've had to put Tom McDonald at full forward, kicking 5 last week. Then you got Pedersen at centre half forward. You've got Sam Frost at centre half back. You look at the Bulldogs, you probably look at their spine. You thought, that's not a premiership
It's
sign.
not Langford, Mew, Breton, and Dunstall, is it?
But then for me, it's still a slight concern. Just there, will they stand up in big games? Buddy Franklin on the MCG, there's no bigger demand than that. But for me, that's still a concern for me at the moment.
Saturday night is stacked 1v3 and 4v6. So let's start with the higher ranked of them, GWS and Geelong.
Going to be a fantastic game. First versus third. Does Joel Selwood play? That's obviously the first question on the agenda. I mean, it's still up for debate. He trained today, so did he ever need to train? He's done so much. He's got such a body of work. It's not a conditioning thing. We know he can back up. In regards to concussion, and I've asked Robbo this, is it the look that they'd be worried about playing, saying yes or no to Joel playing, or is it purely a tick of a box on what the medicos want? But what I will say is if I am going to back anybody that's been knocked out cold to perform the next week, nobody's in front of Joel Selwood in the AFL. Not one person.
No one's got a decision on this except the box. He's got to tick those boxes. As much as Chris Scott would like him to play, and as much as Joel wants him to play, would like to play, the doctors decide this. And he'll have, myself and Joe were talking about it, he'll have another test tomorrow probably. Even if he passes, they'll sit down and have a discussion about whether he should play or not. It can't be all about boxes, can it? Really? Well, got knocked out completely.
I like how you said that's up to the doctors, and you talked about it on SN just before about how he was allowed to walk off the ground. For me, when you're saying it's all about the doctors should have put him on a stretcher to start off with. I know you talked about it, you had calls on Monday. So for me, if it's up to the doctors, I think the doctors are going to let him play. But
no, they wouldn't.
I think, for me, Joel Selwood is a very tough play. They want him to walk off the ground. If he's going to come into a game like this, 1v3, I think he plays no matter what.
Really? I'm staggered by that. No matter what.
I think he'll play.
Football is bigger than no matter what.
So if they were playing a lower ranked team, I think Brisbane on the bottom, if they were playing the Lions this week, Joel doesn't play.
I don't think he'll play, no.
Really?
I think, because it's such a big game, it happened in the first quarter. If he's trained today, I think he'll be fine.
What about the Giants on the other side of the story? How well are they playing? They're obviously in a great position, ladder position. Are they anywhere near their best?
Consistently, no. But so many areas, they've played 33 players. I think the average is about 33 at the moment across the league. So consistency of, I guess, players on the park, that's something they need to settle. The depth for them is unbelievable. When you've got Kelly, Lobb and Smith coming back in, probably the biggest dominance is probably in the ruck with Big Mummy at the moment. He's number one in hit-outs to advantage by 30 or 40 from the second player, which is Sam Jacobs. So what that is, they're number one in clearances, so they're getting first use of the ball. So you come up against a Dangerfield, a Selwood when he plays. When you've got that ball going your way, you've got a little bit more momentum. That's the core of how Geelong plays around that ball. So with GWS, you've got Shield, you've got Cal Ward around there. I think they'll cover him around that area.
In the pre-season, they were touted as flag favourites, and every right they should have been. Have you seen anything in 14 weeks that would suggest they're not handling the pressure, the expectation after 14 weeks of football?
I think they felt the pressure last year. We come against the Bulldogs in that prelim. I think that got to them at that stage, but now I think that hurt from it. They know you don't want to be playing your best footy at the start of the season. You look at the Crows; they were unstoppable for the first 7 or 8 weeks, and then they've hit a flat spot. There's nothing wrong with not playing great football at this stage. I'll talk about the Dogs again last year. They hit their form the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. That's all you need to do. There's clippets of GWS.
Clippets? What are clippets?
Clippets, just little parts, just little separate parts. Is that the right word?
Clips and snippets.
I've never heard of it, Jared.
We say that in the Western Suburbs.
Yeah, clippets. I like it though.
You're right.
Clippets.
You've rattled me now. You know when you've rattled me as well?
No, I know.
When you redid the 2001 draft, you had Gary Ablett as one. You know you had ninth.
Who? Yeah, Dal played 300 games. He's an outstanding player.
Who'd you have 10?
Brian Lane. Any mug can play tall defence. Do you think you should have been ahead of him?
No, I just trying
No.
Make him answer the question,
Robbo. I told you not to
Robbo.
ask it when you were here.
Do you think you should be... You had a better career than Nick Del Santo? Just be honest.
Well, I didn't see all of his games, so I'm not too sure. And
What did you do? 3 premierships? Which you walked into?
Yeah, I was
And a
gifted
Norm
those.
Smith. And you played loose behind the ball all day.
It's not too bad, though.
Two Australians, best and fairest.
You're right. You're 9 and you're 10.
Too late now. You've already published it, Robbo.
Publish and be damned. The other Saturday night game is Port Adelaide and Richmond, which has got a lot going for it.
Going to be an absolute ripper. I mean, we've been lucky with so many great games this football season last week, and then we get 2 on the one day. So I think it's going to be another great game. Huge test once again for both clubs, and we've seen both teams go through little slumps, and you can call it what you like. You can say how long the period of time went for when they weren't playing their best footy. They're both playing fantastic footy here, right now.
What did you see of Port last week that you thought to yourself, my God, that is top of the tree football? What was it?
Well, there's one particular player that's top of the tree. That's Robbie Gray.
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of the way he plays his football. I'll just touch on him first of all. You speak to anybody internally, did a compromised pre-season, is doing compromised training throughout the weeks at the moment to get his body through. His ability, they say he's like a Gary Ablett, and you try and work out what his elite qualities are. He can't run out of sight on a dark night, so it's not fitness. It's this football nous.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how you put a measurement on it. I don't know how you're about to speak to 2 young kids that are going to play in the championship, how you put a measurement on football knowledge and ability. But no one in the AFL, and we spoke about Joel, no one does it better than Robbie Gray. His craft work, his understanding of picking the ball up off the ground without losing his feet, one-on-one contest, he is amazing.
He's right in the Coleman medal discussion, isn't he?
He's coming 5th. He's a small forward at best. I know he gets a lot of one-on-ones. He's 5 behind Jeremy Cameron. It's an amazing player. So that's what I saw on the weekend in particular, Robbo. Their ball movement gives me an opportunity to be elite. But
Jarman Impey, didn't he have a breakout game? I don't know if we've got highlights of him or not, but he gave him such speed. I thought, wow, aren't you a player?
He had a breakout game last year against Collingwood at the MCG as well. And it caught my eye. And I was fortunate enough to be there live and I saw it. He was a flash across the screen and just a different element, a different look to the game that we're currently seeing. Broke the lines, carried it into the forward half. He was elite.
And that's what Port are a different side at home. I know this game's at Adelaide Oval. Compare that to the MCG. We heard it on League Team just before. They're plus 17 minutes in their forward half, the Port Power. So they play that ground so well. They lock it in. They set the ground up behind the ball. Near on unstoppable when they get that ball inside 50. Usually they go wide too to protect that, so that gives their defence some time to set up. And what you do at that ground is you just can't get that ball out if it's locked into their forward 50.
I also think they've got certain players that have got a lot of upside. I reckon Charlie Dixon's been a really good player this year. He could go to another level. He's got that much more tricks in his bag, all these sort of other things. His one-on-ones, he could get 15, 20% better in the remainder of this football season.
Doesn't help when you come up against Alex Rance, though.
Yeah, true.
No, that doesn't help. You better football than Alex Rance?
No. He's probably number 1 or 2, I would have thought, if he redid his draft. What year was he drafted?
Alex Rance, I don't even know when he was drafted. I don't know what number.
It's
if I had to
important
guess,
that Richmond stacks up here, isn't it?
Definitely,
they need to stack up.
We look at their record, that last game that they played, I think it was round 6 against Adelaide. The Crows kicked 13 goals in 2 quarters. That second and third quarter really blew the Tigers away, and they couldn't regroup from that. And they only scored 2 goals themselves. So they stuck with it in that first quarter. I know the Crows were flying at that stage, but you look at those games against the odds away from home. You talk about Melbourne's ability to win against the Eagles there. What that does for a group is huge. You come back here and you've got that confidence that no matter where you are, the crowd's against you. You're down and out, that you can win these close games, and that's why it's so vital. Richmond is number 2 in defence as well, so they can lock the ball in.
They're a good team. They are a good team.
It's just that ability to score against a Port Power that's so good at Adelaide Oval.
Gary Ablett trained today, or just enough to indicate that he's going to play his 300th game?
That's all Gary needs to do.
Yes.
I mean, there's certain players, if you're a young kid coming into a footy club, Brian, that you'd say, I want to model myself on this particular guy, and then there's certain guys you say, don't do it with Gary Ablett, don't do it with Robert Harvey, because what they do, no one else can do. He trains in runners most of his life. His ability to keep his feet and all the other things that you would probably not recommend to a young kid coming into the game. He does the opposite. He's so...
For me, I'd be saying to the kids is, Gary's worked out what works for him.
Yeah.
So you as an individual, yes, you take in what he does at training, his work ethic, but find what makes you feel comfortable. If that's not training, say, in the warm-up, it might take you 5 or 10 minutes, a little bit later to warm up or whatnot. Pre-game, before games, work out what suits you and what works for you. So what works for Gary Ablett doesn't work for every player. So the main thing is you work out what suits you, what makes you feel comfortable.
And as a teammate, you trust him. If Gary said, I want to train for 15 minutes a day in runners and I'll just get through, you'd back him in on Saturday.
Yeah. So your weekend of footy starts with the under-18s tomorrow.
Sure does.
And we're going to meet a couple of the young guns.
The exciting boys.
Thanks, Clippers.
Time.
Good to have you back.
You'll use that.
Yeah, I will use it. Clippers.
Brian Lake and Nick Del
Spell that word.
Tomorrow night, it's a tremendous start to the rounds. At this time, you'll be at the MCG. Melbourne and the Sydney Swans, the best of the pre-game, half-time and post-match analysis right here on Fox. Tomorrow is that familiar look into the future that we have become accustomed to at this time of year. The Under-18s Championships, which have delivered us the stars of the future. And when you think back, you can actually picture a few of these moments. Lance Franklin down at Kardinia Park, Marcus Bontempelli, who went on to live all of what he gave us a glimpse of. Paddy Dangerfield.
Look at him there. He went on with it, I think. I think this guy went on with it as well.
Pendlebury had a bit of glide to him. Cyril. Matt Fife. Just such a light kid.
Have a look at him.
What about Sam Petrosky-Seaton? Yes, spot on. And Tommy Lynch as well. So it is a delight here on Fox Footy tomorrow with 2 games and then we run into the night. So basically from 2 o'clock, that's it. Tools down, telly on. And 2 of the young men you'll see in action from Western Australia. Oscar Allen. Oscar, welcome.
Thank you.
And Adam Chera from Vic Metro. Adam, welcome aboard.
It's good to be here.
How's it going so far?
Yeah, it's good, thank you. Really enjoying the championships. Just flew over yesterday for, this is our first game where we didn't play in Western Australia, but yeah, really enjoying the experience.
Have you known him? Have you seen him play football?
We played WA in round 2, so we went over to Perth.
How did he go?
And as him a player, it was good lead up forward. He's got a good set of hands and, yeah, see him being a good player in the future.
8 goals in 3 games.
You didn't tell us that when you were talking about yourself.
No.
Kept that sort of stuff to yourself.
There was tremendous excitement around the finish of one of your games, a golden point result.
Yeah, our first game of the championships against South Australia actually went the 25 minutes and there was no result, so they just continue on the play. And
did you know?
No, interestingly, myself and our coach Peter Sumich, he didn't even know. So it was kind of one of those 25 minutes, the clock hasn't gone off yet, the runner comes out and says just get the ball forward and see what we can do with it. But
Where were you? Where were you standing?
I was at centre half forward, so I think I was at the centre circle and then I'm running in from the goal line there with the shoulder strapped. But no, it was a great experience.
That's
nice
pretty cool.
moment.
Yeah.
So Adam, how's your championships been so far?
Yeah, as a team we've been on pretty well. 2 wins on the trot now and, yeah, haven't lost a game. So, yeah, we've got a strong list together and, yeah, so beat WA and beat Country last weekend, which is always good to beat Country. Bit of a rivalry there, but, yeah, looking forward to tomorrow. SA.
Do you know him as a footballer? Did you see him play?
Yeah, he played very well against us.
How well?
He had 30, I think.
Oh, did you? Just a lazy 30?
24.
No, it was very good.
Was it? There's his highlights there. So when you guys play against each other, Oscar, when you're playing in a game, do you look at some of these kids, you know, some of these other teenagers and think, God, he's got it. Wow, what a player he is. Do you think that?
Oh, to a certain extent, you do catch glimpses of people playing and think, wow, they've got something special. But especially at this age, I think it's important just to focus on your overall team perspective. I mean, one thing that Peter Sumich preaches to us is to not really look into the opponent. So maybe before the game we'll have 1 or 2 players which are key to their success, but generally it's just focusing on our own game and the rest will hold stead.
So how tall are you?
192 centimetres.
And have you finished growing?
I think I still have a couple centimetres left in me.
By the time you finish, you'll be a 196 centimetre midfielder.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah.
There we go. Good hands. Where did you get crunched then, did you? Did you get a free kick?
Yeah.
Did it hurt?
Nah, wasn't too bad.
Did you kick the goal?
Yeah, I kicked it.
Oh, nice kick.
Not a bad goal. Be honest with me, both of you. When you get to this level, the AFL, it's beckoning you. It's there. Does it really get on your mind? Do you get anxious before you go into the championships thinking this is life-defining, or do you think, hey, it's just another game of football, it's at a really good level, we'll see what happens? How do you control those emotions?
We've got to understand that one game can't really determine your outcome of how your career will go, so you can't really overhype every game. But, yeah, just remember you play footy for fun, so you're there with your mates, and, yeah, don't overthink it, because not too much of it's in your control. You just got to bring what you got on the weekend and, yeah, do your best.
What about the lure of AFL? Is it exciting or is it scary? What is it?
It's obviously exciting, but when you're representing your state, it's such a big thing. And Western Australia, we take really great pride in being able to represent the Black Swan. So obviously you're wanting to play well, but it's also about thinking about what I can do for the team. So generally, if you have that mindset, you don't really get swept away in all the hype towards the game, and you're just really thinking, what can I do to the team? And if you have a successful side, I think it's more likely that people within the side are going to look better, and then it will lead to a better chance of you getting picked up anyway.
That's a very good answer.
Yeah, it's such a balanced way of thinking about it. The rest of it, though, is at this stage you must desperately want it. I presume you've worked a lot of years to sort of open up the possibilities, and then this is, in a way, is finishing it off.
Well, yeah, you've kind of been building up to this 1 year known as a draft year for the last 3-4 years. Some kids started when I was 6 years old, some started a couple of years ago. But yeah, it's pretty exciting knowing coming to the end of it, your junior career almost. And yeah, kind of just look forward to finishing off the year strongly, and yeah, looking forward to the possibility of possibly going to AFL next year, and yeah, it's exciting.
Well, the best of luck to both of you. Once you're in the family, you're always part of the family.
No
You'll
pressure.
always be welcome back here.
No pressure. Every kid who's come on have all been drafted, OK? So keep up the good work.
Adam Chera, Oscar Allen, two names for the future. You can see them from 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon on Fox Footy. Coming up after us, the encore edition of League Teams with Derm and Roosie.
You just become fans, most of it. You just start screaming out, ah!
See, he's at I'm at 45, so he's kicked that. I'm at 45, seriously.
Meg Ryan, when Harry met Sally, ah!
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Tony Shaw gave me a signed book, and said, well done, you kept your eye on the footy.
You shaped Essendon, and then the AFL asked you to shape this club.
Vladimir did, yes.
Haven't heard that for a while.
Vladimir Dimitrov.
He's almost 32, so he had to grow up at some stage and find himself a girlfriend.
Have you ever followed the AFL, Jeff?
I did. I used to follow it a few years back when the Lions were winning.
Bobby Davis once, poor Bobby can't defend himself here, but he said that he would trade Gary in his first year.
How long did he kick it?
45. Have a look what I watched. See the square? Have a look at the square. And he's lied for 41 years. He kicked it 70 or 80 metres. It's a disgrace.
Some of Mark McCaw's best. Tomorrow night, the stepping off point for round 15, Melbourne and the Sydney Swans, a beauty from the MCG.
Yes,
all that remains is the weekend forecast, Robbo, and he can get to Sheeds' shindig.
He's 50 years in football.
So your sure thing.
It's only us two.
Just us.
We have not done the weekend forecast, just me and you, I reckon, for 3 years.
Yep, I reckon you're right.
So we're going to carry it, me and you.
Come on.
Righto, let's go.
Sure
the
thing.
Shot clock fiasco, Jared.
So negative, Robbo.
There will be a fiasco. Something will happen and you'll go bonkers.
Yeah.
Absolutely sure thing. Jared, sure thing.
Score review fiasco. I went with Saturday Night Spite. Is that Port Adelaide Richmond thing?
Oh yeah, that's
having
real.
witnessed
real or
Jack,
overreaction,
and then a little bit. That's real.
That is real.
That's going to add a little element to what's to come. Most at stake.
Port Adelaide, Jared. Port Adelaide. I don't even know why. I do know why, but we haven't got a lot of time. They've got to win. The problem is when Port Adelaide plays a great game like they did last week and dispense with Collingwood, you think, God, they're back in it. They're a real contender. And a couple of times they haven't been far from it. I think it'd be really disappointing if they lost this game. You?
Adelaide, just knuckle down and beat Carlton. Just knuckle down and get it done. Doomsday, worst thing that can happen.
Suns lose, Gaz's 300, spotlight goes to the future of Rodney Eade.
Yeah, you want Gaz carried off, don't you?
Yes, we do. You?
Eagles meekly submit.
I've got
Don't
a
shirk
third
the
one.
test, don't slink away.
Third one, you get a sore throat ahead of, ding, ding.
Go and enjoy Sheets.
I will.
See you next week on 360.
This has been a production of Fox Sports.